everybody, and welcome to our dinner entitled Breaking with Tradition. I'm your MC tonight, Robert Vaughan. So before we begin, though, there is a tradition that perhaps we don't want to break with, and that is a toast. We usually have a toast at the beginning of all of our dinner functions. If I could ask everybody just to please stand up with their glass of water or whatever they have there, and we'll have a toast. To the freedoms we now enjoy, and to the freedoms lost to be regained. To freedom.
To freedom.
So the title of tonight is Breaking with Tradition. And I know, looking around the room, and I know most of you here, that many of us supporters, Freedom Party supporters, have in the past and still do support or vote for other political parties. And I'm guilty of this as well. For the people... I think I'll leave now, yeah. For those of you who don't know me, I was president of the London Fanshawe PC Riding Association. I ran as a Canadian Alliance candidate in the 2001 federal election. My campaign office was opened by Preston Manning, with whom I pressed the voting flesh at Masonville Mall. I went door to door with Diana Blonsey, and I stood shoulder to shoulder with Stockwell Dana at least 3 occasions on stage. That being said, yes, hold the eggs and the rotten tomatoes. That being said, I must now atone for my sins, please, and admonish conservatives. Even the ones in this room, please take umbrage at what I'm about to say. For taking me down the garden path, a path that has led to a loss of freedom, not towards it. I supported the Conservatives mainly for the reason that I am more interested in economic freedom than personal freedom per se. Many of the constraints on personal freedom can be simply overcome by staying inside and closing your curtains. Economic freedom, however, is not so easy to regain once lost. Also, as Ann Coulter said, you have to pick your poison. The end result of such an action is, of course, that the lesser of two evils is still evil, and that poison is still poison. If given the choice, which I still gratefully have, I choose life and I choose freedom. The Conservatives seemed the more attractive of the two main parties because I wanted to desperately believe the rhetoric surrounding them, not only coming out of their own mouths, but out of the mouths of their opponents and the media. Conservatives are generally thought to have some or all of the following characteristics: fiscally conservative, prudent, slow to change or accept change, adverse to bureaucratic red tape and restrictions, nationalistic, pro-business. Their opposition in media would sometimes take these traits and extend them to the extreme. Fiscally prudent becomes tight-fisty, greedy capitalists. Slow to change becomes fossils. Adverse to bureaucracy becomes slash and burn or anti-union. Nationalistic becomes jingoistic. And pro-business becomes screw the poor. Regardless of the labels, I believe that the Conservatives supported the one true economic political system I know to be just, and that is capitalism. I was wrong, very wrong. Ayn Rand once described the agenda of conservatives to be the implementation of freedom by stealth. In this one case, I think Ayn Rand was wrong. I have come to realize that conservatives in general have an agenda of socialism, not capitalism. Stephen Harper has recently said that he believes in freedom, family, and faith, and that freedom must be tempered by faith. To put it unequivocally, Stephen Harper believes that your personal freedom must be tempered by his personal faith. The same application of faith to freedom can be seen in Ahmadinejad's Iran or Karzai's Afghanistan. Witness Stockwell Day's recent pledge to put over $9 billion into building new prisons to, as Paul McKeever recently surmised in his blog, to house the countless cannabis users in this country, the so-called unreported criminals. Our sons and daughters will be subject to a minimum jail term of 6 months for smoking pot. Stephen Harper's faith will destroy your family and your freedom. As far back as the beginning of this nation, the Conservatives' socialist streak has been written large in the names of their party. Sir John A. Macdonald led the Liberal Conservative Party, a name that still survived with little change until 1942, when it became the Progressive Conservative Party, which again has become the Conservative Party to finally hide the liberal leanings of the Conservatives, only in name. Recently, John Turner wrote that we should erect a statue to Conservative Prime Minister R.B. Bennett. Why? Because Bennett, a Conservative, was our version of America's FDR. In 1935, Bennett introduced a Canadian version of the New Deal involving unprecedented public spending and federal intervention in the economy, progressive income taxation, a minimum wage, a maximum number of working hours per week, unemployment insurance, health insurance, an expanded pension program, and grants to farmers were all included in Bennett's plan. He also proposed the formation of the CBC, and he nationalized the Bank of Canada. In one of his addresses to the nation, Conservative Bennett said, quote, "I am for reform, and in my mind, reform means government intervention. It means government control and regulation. It means the end of laissez-faire." That's from a Conservative. This kind of liberal Conservative has not changed, even under the Harper Conservatives. It's not just the words and actions of Conservatives which is damaging to freedom. It is also their inactions. With every Liberal government comes a new socialist program, be it official bilingualism, official multiculturalism, which, by the way, was a Trudeau idea implemented by Conservative Mulroney. A new welfare program, free education to 4-year-olds, free education to 3-year-olds, free daycare, human rights commissions, the list is endless. What is conspicuous is that when the Conservatives finally ascend to power, do they repeal these socialist pipe dreams? No. They fall over themselves, fighting to show that they can manage these programs more efficiently than the Liberals. They support the programs and revel in putting more money into them. The following is from Maclean's magazine. It's a rather lengthy quote. In a 1999 interview with Terry O'Neill of BC Report magazine, Harper said, quoting Harper, "Human rights commissions, as they are evolving, are an attack on our fundamental freedoms and the basic existence of a democratic society." He said, "It is in fact totalitarianism. I find this very scary stuff," unquote. He went on to complain about the bastardization of the most entire concept of rights in modern society. Of course, that's back when Harper was president of the National Citizens Coalition. Today, he's Canada's 22nd Prime Minister, and it appears to have lost fear of totalitarianism. So we, being Maclean's magazine, asked Harper if he intended to correct this threat to the basic existence of a democratic society. Quote, "The government has no plans to do so," unquote, was his casual reply. Quote, It is a very tricky issue of public policy. It's probably the case that we haven't got the balance right. But I'm not sure that the government today has any answer on what an appropriate balance would be," unquote. After 4 years of a Conservative government, we still have the long gun registry. Also, after 500 years of boating in Canada, the Conservatives say we now have to get a government-issued certificate to operate a boat. What would the voyageurs have said to such a thing? In the 1984 election, the Progressive Conservative Party of Brian Mulroney was elected to a majority in the House of Commons with the support of Western Canada after campaigning against the National Energy Program. However, Mulroney did not eliminate the last vestiges of the program until 2.5 years later into his mandate, at which time world oil prices had dropped below pre-1980 levels, which allowed him to do it. The Conservative government delay was a contributing factor to the creation of the Western Canada's Reform Party of Canada, and probably one of the worst instances of a Conservative socialism, the first incarnation of OHIP. the biggest drain on Ontario's budget was passed under the successive Conservative governments of John Robarts and Bill Davis. Both parties, regardless of Conservative rhetoric, believe and support our massive welfare state. Both parties support bureaucracy and red tape. Consider Harper's call for a massive increase in the distribution of the long-form census, albeit with the threat of jail removed. For this, he's granted the label of libertarian. The Conservatives, when they are in government, prop up, support, and extend the very legislation they oppose in opposition. Rarely is it ever heard of that the Conservatives have repealed any legislation that a preceding Liberal government has imposed. Today, they can't even repeal the long-form census properly. They have to send it out to even more people, millions more Canadians, asking the same invasive, racist questions that were in the old long-form census. Of the two parties, it is my belief that the Conservatives, which has the most detrimental effect on freedom in Canada. They do not attempt to roll back socialism and bureaucracy. They seek only to make them more efficient, which, if such a thing could work, would only make socialism more palatable to the public and longer lived. They may say that they oppose the statism of the Liberals while they're in opposition, but when they gain power, they maintain the very socialist endeavors of their like-minded left-wing predecessors. In this inaction, this failure to rescind the ever-encroaching power of the state into our daily personal and economic lives, which makes the Conservatives worse than the Liberals. I'm not asking you to vote Liberal, by the way. It is this inaction that gives tacit post-approval of every left-wing action of the Liberals or the New Democrats. But ultimately, it is the hope we sometimes get when they talk about repealing, for example, gun laws, lower spending, cutting red tape, that has the worst effect on people who love freedom, like myself. It was the hope. They continue to support the Conservatives, like I did, even when their hopes are always, and I mean always, dashed when their party gets into power. If these people took the energy they spent getting the Conservatives elected and channeled it into real action to promote freedom in this country, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in today. Fortunately, in this room, we have people who are prepared to support and vote for freedom. Some may claim that this is splitting the right-wing vote. That's not true, since Canada has no right wing. As I've already shown, all three main parties, federally and provincially, are socialist, all of them, in their policies and their actions. Support for Freedom Party is the only rational choice anyone who loves freedom can make. Thank you.